Hello, friends. Let us discuss an important topic from your Pakistan Studies course. Today, we shall be talking about the non cooperation movement and the three roundtable conferences. For reference, I'll be using a book by Nigel Kelly, The History and Culture of Pakistan. So, just to give you a quick review of the events that happened before the launching of the non cooperation movement, the Simon Commission had come to India and it had been rejected by the Indians. In response to the Simon Commission, a Nehru report was presented and Jinnah's 14 points were also presented. Here we see that the Muslim League and Congress had parted ways. Now let us understand the non-cooperation movement in detail. It formally began in December 1929 when the Congress leaders they met in Lahore and they elected Jawaharlal Nehru as the president of that session, and it was a historic session because they rejected the dominion status which the Congress had been asking for. If you remember the points of the Nehru report, one of them said that they asked for a dominion status, but here they were asking for a complete independence and they rejected the concept of the dominion status. So it's important to remember that. Then, on the midnight of the 31st of December, it's not 1931, excuse me for that mistake. It is the midnight of the 31st of December. Nehru led a procession to the banks of River Ravi. River Ravi is a river in India. Here, the Indian flag was raised, and there were cries of "Long live the revolution." So, this is how the movement actually began. Now, weeks later, after that, a Declaration of Indian Independence was written down by Gandhi, and it was read across the entire nation. And just to give you a quick look at the pictures, so this is Jawaharlal Nehru and Gandhi, and this is how they were leading their marches and processions. This is Gandhi on the in the forefront and the other leaders of Congress. Okay, this is Gandhi addressing his people. Okay, now we are talking about the Salt March, which is an important event, and the non-cooperation movement. So Salt March actually solidified the non-cooperation movement. The non-cooperation movement, if you remember earlier, it was also launched during the time of the Khilafat movement, but that non-cooperation movement was actually called off because of an incident that took place. It was the Chori Chora incident, if you remember, that police station. If you don't remember, then I have made a video on it, and I'll be giving a link to that in the description box below. So that Chori Chora incident had happened in 1922. So after 1922, this was the time that the non-cooperation movement was getting revived once again. Okay, so Gandhi was the leader of this movement. Earlier also he was the one who was leading it, but this time also. And on 12th of March, a march was led by him from his ashram. This march began to the village of Dandi. The name of the village is Dandi. Okay, now this was a 24-day march. Okay, so it was a very, very long march and it gained a lot of popularity. Now, the Salt March was actually an attack on the unfair salt laws. The British had come up with a lot of unfair laws, and one of them was the salt laws also, which were these laws were imposed on the innocent Indian population by the British government. So, what the Indian population did under the leadership of Gandhi, they started to picket shops and the schools and colleges, they all were boycotted. So this was again a movement of resistance against these unfair laws that had been issued by the British government. Now let us understand the reaction that came from the British government to the Salt March. Congress was obviously outlawed because they were going against the British government. Then there were widespread arrests and newspapers were also censored. Gandhi, Nehru and many of the important leaders of the Congress, they got arrested. However, Jinnah's response was a little different. He was not in favor of this non-cooperation and he saw this as Congress' move to independence and dominance over Muslims, so he kept away from the non-cooperation movement and he also advised the Muslims to do so. The Muslims therefore did not join the non-cooperation campaign. However, many of the Muslims were with the Congress when they had introduced this non-cooperation movement at the time of the Khilafat movement. So this was a difference. And you Okay, now a brief introduction on the personality of Dr. Allama Iqbal. Dr. Allama Iqbal, words fall short when it comes to describing him. He was a philosopher, a poet, a reformer. Now he comes into the limelight when he was asked to chair a meeting of the Muslim League, Now, in his address, now this is a very historic address where he gave his views on the political situation of the subcontinent, and he declared Islam as the complete code of life and gave very sound arguments in support of his views. Now, he believed that living together like that within India as a homogeneous state would not be fruitful for all the different communities living in India. In his words, India is a continent of human beings belonging to different languages and professing different religions. To base a constitution on the conception of a homogeneous India is to prepare her for a civil war. So, therefore, he decided that the Muslims needed to have a separate independent homeland. A northwest Indian Muslim state for him was a destiny of the Muslims. And he also called for a federal system of governance. He asked that the Muslim majority areas should be given same privileges as the other non-Muslim states were given. And another idea presented by him was that Punjab, NWFP, and Balochistan should be amalgamated as one. So the first roundtable conference, it took place in November 1930. And where is it taking place? It's taking place in London. People who attended the conference included, this is important, you have to remember that it was attended by the Muslim League, and in the Muslim League, some of the major, personalities who were involved were Jinnah, Maulana Muhammad Ali Khan, Chaudhry Zafarullah, Sir Shah Nawaz, Sir Muhammad Shafi, Ghulam Hussain, Hidayatullah, etc., etc. And there were liberals also and representatives of the princely states also who attended this conference. However, Congress did not participate, and not much was achieved. The few points that were made were that the um, um, the princes states, they showed their approval on joining a future federation if their rights were recognized. Okay, so it's not prices, please excuse me for this. It is the princely states, the princes of the princely states. They showed their approval on joining a future federation only and only if their rights were recognized by the British government, and the British government agreed that the representative government should be introduced at a provincial level as well. The most important decision that was taken at the conference was the approval of a federal system of governance for India, which is this, okay, which is this point. In other words, the British government agreeing that a representative government should be introduced at the provincial level as well. So this is all about the first roundtable conference. You got to remember the parties that were involved or that participated, and Congress was not part of it, and what happened, what was achieved. Okay, after the first roundtable conference, it was understood that no solid solution could be achieved unless and until the most important or the party that had the majority in India was not involved in the conferences, and it was Congress. So what happened is the failure of the first conference, it compelled the Indian representatives to convince Gandhi that you have to come into the next talks, and you have to come down, step down from the adamant stance that you have taken. So Gandhi finally decided that he should also meet Lord Viceroy, Lord Irwin in February 1931. A series of meetings were held then, and on 5th of March 1931, Gandhi-Irwin Pact was signed. Irwin was the Viceroy at that time, so Gandhi-Irwin Pact was signed. So the political, as a result of this pact, so whenever you sign a pact or an agreement is signed, then both the parties or both the consenting parties, they agree to do certain things. So what was agreed upon from the part of the British government? They agreed that they would release their political prisoners. They agreed to release or the property that was seized by the government. And in return, Gandhi also called off the non-cooperation movement and gave up his demand for full independence. Until now, he had been crying for full independence, right? So he had given up his demand now, and he also agreed upon a federal. It was also agreed that a federal system of governance would be installed, with power resting in the hands of the Indians. Hence, the second roundtable conference. Okay, just a minute. See, in the second roundtable conference, you can spot Gandhi sitting here. Okay, so this is the second roundtable conference. Okay, now in the second roundtable conference, these were the things that were discussed, and this is what happened. NWP and Sindh were decided to be made separate provinces with their own governors, and a warning was issued by the British that if no agreement was made, then they would impose their own solution to the Indian problems. Now, what were the reasons for the failure of the second roundtable conference? The Labour Party now had lost in Britain, and the new government was not very compromising. Okay, so we saw Lord Irwin. He was a very lenient sort of a person who was trying to come up with some sort of a solution for the Indian problem. But now the new government that was in power was not very compromising. Okay, and Gandhi refused. Surprisingly, he had taken a very kind of a very rigid stance here, and he refused to recognize the problem of the minorities. Now, this was something which the minority issue, when it was presented in the conference, Gandhi refused to accept any rights of the minorities and demanded that the minority committee should be disbanded. He claimed that he, being the sole representative of the Congress, represented the Indian people. So this had created a lot of trouble. They tried to bring Gandhi to some sort of a compromising position, but he was unwilling. So therefore, the second roundtable conference, it failed miserably. Okay, now let's discuss the third roundtable conference, which is the final conference. Lord Irwin had been replaced by Lord Wellington, who ordered arrests wherever the non-cooperation movement resurfaced. Gandhi, Nehru, and many other leaders got arrested. The non cooperation campaign restarted with full zeal and zest. Okay, and a communal award was released. This award was released by Ramsay MacDonald, who was the British Prime Minister at that time. Now, communal award was an award that the Muslim League had was asking for, because they wanted some sort of concessions for the Muslims living in India. So, according to this communal award, Muslims were given weightage in the Hindu dominated provinces, and Muslim majority in Punjab and Bengal got reduced. Sindh was taken from the Bombay presidency and it was made into a Muslim province. Now, whenever a question of the communal award is asked, you are supposed to write these points. That is, the Muslims were given weightage. It was a concession that was given to the Muslims. They were given weightage in the Hindu dominated areas. Okay, and Muslim majority in Punjab and Bengal was reduced. Sindh had been taken away from Bombay and it was made into a Muslim province. So these were the main points of the communal award. Who was it released by? It was released by Ramsay MacDonald, who was the British Prime Minister at that time. Now, obviously, Congress would reject it, but Muslim League had to accept it. Partly it was in favor of the Muslim League, and partly it was not. But Muslim League had to accept it because it had asked for this award. Now, Congress did not attend the conference, and Jinnah also went into voluntary exile. So he was not part of the third roundtable conference, and Congress was also not part of this conference. Now, 46 delegates were member of this conference, and the Muslims in this conference were represented by Sir Aga Khan, and nothing much was achieved. It was a complete failure. So, with this, we end. So, today's lesson was all about the non cooperation movement, how it began, what happened during it, how the leaders got arrested, then they, were also released, and then they again got arrested. Okay, and we saw the failure, complete failure of the three roundtable conferences. So, if a question is asked about, how far were these conferences a success or a failure, so you can present all your points. These are the, all the important and valid points that you need to remember, and then you can build your answer around them, around all the points, these small points and pointers that I have shown you in this slideshow. Okay, so till my next video, I'm Nida Umar signing off. Take care of yourselves and also of your loved ones. Bye bye.